What are some unwritten rules you hate? What are some unwritten rules? And what do you think about this particular unwritten rule?
The unwritten rule about not being able to bunt to get on base when you're up big, or steal a base when you're up big, I think is the most sissy, sensitive rule that anybody can make just to protect their ego, because you don't like that the other team is beating you, so you're going to cry and make up something, so they're not allowed to do it because it's not right. But it's still okay if the team that's down by a lot makes a comeback, and then it now makes it a ball game. But it's not okay beforehand, though. So we can only do these. We're only allowed to do this when we're neck and neck or whatnot. I think that's just what makes it silly. In the NBA, sure, like the only unwritten rule in the NBA, hypothetically, that I've heard of is if you're on the losing team and you dunk, you don't celebrate or get all crazy because you're down by, let's say, 30. You just don't do that. Why? Because it's a bad look. What are you celebrating for? You're losing. You know, in the NFL, like there are a couple of unwritten rules about there, like you don't run up the score. I think baseball, why it's so unpopular to younger audiences, is because sometimes it's not fun. We want to have America's pastime be great, but we're not opening it up to other audiences that maybe show emotion. And we want to protect sensitive egos because of these unwritten rules. And honestly, I'm going to steal this one from you, and I know you'll say it. If it was a rule to begin with, they would have wrote it down, but it's not. Yeah. So it shouldn't matter. And I love that you told me that today on Marco Polo, so that's why I'm using it now. The one unwritten rule, and I read some of these to you before we started, was there's an unwritten rule, according to Wikipedia, in the baseball world, that you're not allowed to swing at the first pitch at your at-bat if the pitcher has given up back-to-back home runs.
Ridiculous.
That is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen. So then let me so you mean to tell me that if I see a pitch that looks good and I have an opportunity to do something with it, get on base
back to back
to make it back to back to back. You mean I'm not supposed to protect that pitcher's ego because it's an unwritten rule? What if I'm trying to make a comeback for my team? What happens if it's a momentum swinging pitch? I mean, granted, the pitcher just gave up 2 consecutive home runs. Why can't I swing at the first pitch I like? What's the problem with that? So that was one unwritten rule that I just read before we started that I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
How much the thought behind you get? Go ahead.
The thought behind that
I want to hear this.
The thought that is behind it is you never know who is going to be your teammate. And so that pitcher will not forget that you did that. But on the contrary, my counterpoint would be, you weren't my teammate then. Like, I don't care. Like,
so if that's the same premise, so if you strike me out and we're teammates, are we cool then? Like if we're gonna keep it that way. So let's say, because I know that you were you a pitcher primarily, or were you?
No, just position player.
Okay, so let's say I was a pitcher, right? So you mean to tell me that if you hit one out of the park on me and we're on the same team, I won't forget it, but if I strike you out, then we're cool? Is that how it's supposed to be?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay, that's just the most weirdest thing I've ever heard. Anyways, I think my point being, and I know you'll touch base more about this in lower age playing to like adult and majors. I know you'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But I think my point of it is like as somebody who's kind of, I would say, an outsider, I like baseball. I do enjoy watching it. I'm not as heavily involved as you are, let's say. That's why I call you the baseball guy. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I mean, I just didn't grow up playing baseball. I got into it really late. I know what I know now, and as I watch it, I learn more. But obviously, you know way more than I do. I just never understood these unwritten rules and why, like, the pitcher can be upset with you because you hit a home run out of the park and he didn't like the way you trotted around the bases. Yeah. Like, what in the hell are we talking? Pardon me. What are we talking about? You know, things like that. And their struggle with making the game fun for other audiences. Well, other audiences celebrate when they do something that they weren't expecting to do. So to penalize them makes the point of like, well, if you want new audiences, then you need to change what you're doing.
Here's the thing. When baseball started, it was kind of just a game that guys got together and played, you know, and then there were guys who then started playing for these teams that kind of got, paid for it a little bit, but had jobs everywhere else. And so, like, it just kind of developed into a thing where, okay, now these guys literally just do this. They don't do anything else. Like, they're focusing on baseball. And that's when, money kept getting more and more and more and more, which is fine. But when the baseball started, it was just like a game. And so it's just kind of evolved into this. Now it's an actual sport. This is what people do for a living. And what I feel like baseball never has done and has been horrible at is never pivoting into, hey, the game has changed. This is a little different now. Now we're here. It's okay to do some of these things. And we're still like, no, you're not supposed to do that. That could hurt someone's feelings. Listen, if we're in Little League, I remember being in Little League. I remember I watched my brother-in-law who's in high school baseball right now. I remember watching all of them, and it was like, okay, you don't do that. Like, these kids, especially if a kid team was getting blown out like 13-2, you don't bunt. It's just, don't do it. Like, these kids are already, sad that they're losing. They don't understand how to react or come back from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not quite sure enough to process that yet.
Yeah, they don't understand yet. And that's okay. And so, to me, like, even in high school, don't do it. Some of these kids are just playing the game for fun. So you don't need to do it. There's no point in it. But when you're a professional, you're being paid millions of dollars. It reminds me of this. It reminds me of when Cam Newton scored that rushing touchdown when they were already up big, and they're like, and then he celebrated, and they're like, how could he? Right. How could he celebrate? Yep. And it was like, well, stop him. I don't know. You're getting paid to stop him, and you didn't. So I kind of feel like he earned it. I don't care. Like, go ahead, get in the end zone. It reminds me of the whole, Russell Westbrook being upset that the fans were booing him and calling him Westbrook. Like, would I be that? Probably not. I probably wouldn't do that. I just. It doesn't really do anything for me, but there are fans who do that. And listen, you're being paid millions of dollars to score a basket, and when you're not doing that, and you're constantly turning the ball over, and you're constantly doing all this thing that's really not helping the team, I feel like you kind of deserve to get booed. We're paying your salary by going to these games, so we expect you to kind of, I don't know, play well. So, and if you're not, I'm going to let you know, and I think that's okay. So, I don't know. These unwritten rules to me is bogus when it comes to professional players. Like, listen, with Madison Bumgarner, I liked watching him, but I never really understood why he got so mad at Yasiel Puig. Puig was this guy who was this like electric baseball player that just like came out of nowhere. His story was amazing. He comes into the league. He hit a home run off of Madison Bumgarner, and Bumgarner hated it. He was a competitor. He hated that he hit a home run, and then he celebrated, which just pissed him off. So I understand that thought process, but at the same time, it's like, then make a better pitch. The one thing that has been really new, especially this year with college baseball, is there's more and more of these college pitchers that when they make a big strikeout in a game, they're celebrating just like a batter would if he hit a home run off of a pitcher. Yeah. People hate it. They're so mad. They're like, oh, how could you celebrate like this? That is your job. You're supposed to do that. Who cares? Yeah. He made a huge play. Why does it matter what game it is? It's a big play at a big time, at a moment at that time. It's okay that they celebrate. And the bat flips, God, I love watching the Jose Bautista one where he crushes it and he kind of stares at it for a second, and then he kind of flipped the bat. And that was in a postseason game, and people were livid about that. And I was like, dude, that was a huge moment. That was an awesome home run.
It's a huge highlight for baseball. Yeah, like I see it on promos all the time. I agree. Like when it comes to like bat flips or pitchers showing emotion, I don't know if anyone's ever been in some sort of competition where you are heavily invested emotionally, physically, all that into something to then see your the fruits of your labor, so to speak, or to see an accomplishment happen in front of you, you're going to let out some type of emotion. It drives me nuts. I wish that they would just come across us, and I think it's a little bit more acceptable now. Like a lot of the older baseball, aficionados that are saying like don't do that aren't being listened to as much. Like I do see a little bit more excitement, so to speak, in baseball a little bit more, which I like to see. I still though would like to get past the whole they violated an unwritten rule by bunting to get on base. That bugs the crud out of me, and I wish that there was more excitement. Like some of these videos you see on social media of minor league teams like dancing right before the pitcher throws the pitch to the batter, and everybody in the umpire is getting into it. I think that is fun and exciting, but I know like if that was an actual major league game, there'd be a uproar. What is the pitcher doing dancing right before? We're not in dance class. We're playing baseball. I can already see that happening. But when I see those, it's super exciting.